The Trump administration is also focusing on Iran this morning, the U.S. curbing that country's ability to export oil. And that announcement comes from the Secretary of State himself, Mike Pompeo. The U.S. also spiking up the price of oil, which affects us directly here. Let's bring in Scott with more on this story. So what did the U.S. Secretary of State have to say, first and foremost?
Basically, he said to 5 large countries around the world that you will no longer have exemptions as far as the sanctions that the U.S. placed against Iran when the U.S. withdrew from the nuclear agreement last summer. So what the Secretary of State said was that what they wanted to cut off curtailment, that they wanted to impose sanctions and bring down the ability for Iran to export basically zero oil. And there's a couple of questions that he was asked. One, is this in order to kickstart negotiations as far as getting some sort of nuclear treaty going forward, or is this strictly just to punish Iran? And here's the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo's answer.
We have watched Iran have diminished power as a result of our campaign. Their capacity to wreak harm around the world is absolutely clearly diminished. I talked about it with respect to Hezbollah not being able to make payroll in a timely fashion. I've talked about it in other places as well. What we're announcing this morning, the designation of the IRGC a couple of weeks back, actions that we'll take in a handful of weeks. Each of these things will continue to support the Iranian people.
So basically what this does is it gets rid of exemptions for Japan, South Korea, Turkey, China, and India. And lots of questions here that we don't know. One is the length of these sanctions, how long they're going to be in effect for, what kind of compliance tools they're going to have against massive countries like China and India, for example. But we do know that it takes about 1 million barrels of oil out of production around the world. So this is a sizable chunk. We're seeing the price of oil spike to the upside, but the U.S. president tweeted after the announcement saying to reassure currency traders and commodity traders out there, saying that Saudi Arabia and others in OPEC will more than make up for the oil flow difference in our now full sanctions on Iranian oil.